Well, good evening everyone. Today we have an enormous 100 watt Vox head. I'll be getting the model number momentarily. Let's see here. So it's 2-channel output master volume, reverb, presence, bass, middle, and treble for channel 2, and gain for channel 2. And then channel 1, volume, reverb, tone cut, bass, middle, treble, gain. The one with tone cut, that sounds a lot like an AC100 type channel, and then there's a drive channel. And then you have a clicker switch for input 1 and 2, which is probably also foot switchable. And there's an input jack there that wiggles around a lot. Speaking of things that wiggle around, okay, this is an AC100CPH head amplifier. Let's see. Mains input, fuse, direct box, which is kind of cool, effect loop, and speaker outputs, and it's switchable between 8 or 16 ohm. Alright, here's what I observe. This amp is not bolted down. If this was sitting face up, I could wiggle this chassis around. So the bolts that hold this chassis down to the ground, or down to the bottom of the cabinet, are somehow loose, and that's not good. This thing's got 4 EL34s in it and a bunch of preamp tubes. We'll have to take this apart. We're going to have to clean it. The Tolex is not terrible, but there's a lot of little nicks. Got a couple there. We've got one broken corner protector. We've got a ding there. You know, just a bunch of little things. So we'll probably do a little bit of cosmetic on this to get it to look a little nicer. But in general it works. So we're going to just go through, deal with the wobbly input jack and the kind of loose cabinet to chassis connection, and then
okay, so it's out of the chassis. We got 4 tongue saws and 4 JJs. Considering this amp was probably made in 2007, because it's got a November 2006 date on the power transformer, or on the, yeah, and they made these from 07 to 09. I'm going to think this is a first year. Being loose in the cabinet just appears to be loose bolts on the side. Some dodo didn't tighten them all the way, or they shook it up enough that it got it loose. So that's no big deal. But what we're going to deal with here is, we'll see if we can get a picture of it here without tipping the amp and shaking it up. Our input jack is pretty freaking wiggly. I will give Vox credit, despite the fact that we put our volume pots and things on a PC board. It's on a separate PC board from the rest of the stuff in the amp, so it's less likely to crack and fail like a Marshall. So that's cool. I'm gonna guess that I can probably just back that cliff nut off and then retighten it again, and I'll do that. And if I can't, okay, yeah, that worked good. I just unscrewed the nut off the front there and then spun it back on and tightened it with a little dog bone wrench, and it's holding fine, so that's great. Somebody must have just stomped on their cable and popped that nut loose or something. It apparently isn't stripped to heck, so it's good. The only other issues I really saw with this amp were the dirt and just the dirt and the cosmetics of it. So that's about it, because we already determined why the chassis was loose. This amp isn't that old, and everything, you know, appears healthy, and the thing works right. So probably just, you know, test the tubes and give the body a bath and put her back together.
Okay, well, this sucks, because I started just trying to test tubes, and my tube tester here got mad and told me my tube was a fail, and I'm like, what? And the damn centering pins are busted off, at least these first 2. I think with that chassis loose, it got rattled around and got messed up. I mean, I heard it work. I think the tubes are okay, but this center pin thing, and of course I see them, they're down there, so I gotta go fish them out, and we'll put a drop of glue on them. Ugh. Okay, so the good news is the other 2 that are still in the amp, those 2 do have their centering pins, and they're okay, they're not fractured. We'll get around to testing these. This is a fairly young set of tubes, so I think we're okay there. That little glue mark I'm thinking is just a manufacturing thing. because I don't see any. I don't see any. I didn't have any operational issues with this amplifier. I just think it needs a bath. And the front panel actually looks pretty nice. Should clean up okay. We'll try to plug a cable in there and wiggle it around to make sure that this input jack isn't going to pop loose again, because that would suck. We don't want that to happen. If it does, we'll have to replace it. This is why I prefer the Switchcraft, metal ones as opposed to the Cliff Plastics. Okay, so I did put some super glue or CA glue or whatever you want to call it on these, and that should hold. One of the tricks, if you don't know, which you probably do because everybody seems to know this, but if you don't, that's okay. If you have two things that fit together perfectly, you just use a minimum amount of glue and then press it together really, really hard, because if you can get all of the air out of the joint of the plastics, they bond almost instantaneously, because that's already fairly good set, and that's only been on there for like 2 minutes, and it's already set real good. It'll bond almost instantly if you mash them together. It's kind of like why it'll meld your fingers together if you squeeze it. Okay, on to the continuing testing tubes. Nothing exciting so far. Those actually did pass, the ones with the broken tips. And what I ended up doing is I ended up having to push these centering pins down through the socket and finding them on the other side, because pulling them out didn't seem to work. They fit in there too firmly. Yeah, they fit in there too firm, so I pushed them through and caught them on the other side. So hopefully we didn't mess anything up doing that. I don't think so. Alright, cool. Okay, so those two preamp tubes tested okay, but this one over here and that one there, I don't know what it's upset about, because these tongue cells usually are fine, but we'll just watch it start testing here. And obviously this thing just gives you feedback on various things, and it talks about all the things that it actually tests for while it's testing. But it gets about halfway through the test and then whammo, fail. So something it does not like about those two. These four are the same, so I don't know, maybe they just got their cage rattled, so we'll go into the bin and get some replacement tubes.
Okay, so that's a good result. That tube gets a 9 and 10, so this is a replacement tube. It's an old Sovtech. It's actually kind of old, but the labeling's a little even rubbed off, but it's good tube, so if it's good tube it goes in. And then this is another tube I tested that I have in my stash, so not necessarily new, but working good. Power tubes have passed now, and I glued the pins, the alignments back on them. So now essentially we give this thing a bath and try to deal with the cosmetics, and then we're going to be happy.
Okay, boys and girls, we're cleaning our cabinet, which is great, and it cleans up very well. We use the amazing Mr. V's wonderful all-purpose cleaner, guaranteed to remove beer, cigarettes, and all kinds of other things, spit and everything else you come in contact with at a concert. Makes the Tolex look nice and clean and shiny, but darn it, the nicks on this thing show up. And the best way to fix that, believe it or not, if it's like really ripped and there's like a long strip, glue it down. But when you got to touch up Tolex, big secret. This is actually a black Tolex. Kind of looks bluish with the way the light hits it, but it's black. Use this stuff. Go to the generic drugstore, get yourself some nail polish. You fill in all these little dings and nicks with a touch of nail polish, and you probably won't know they were there. Okay, so there's the same surface now that we've treated it. That one, the light's really hitting it so you can see my spot, but how about the one down here? This was the biggest and brightest one. I sure can't see it in the viewfinder. I can see it with the naked eye when I'm specifically looking for it. But again, you can get these things to what I would call 6-foot perfection. Just taking minor nicks out of the Tolex just by putting a drop of nail polish in any nicks.
Okay, so here's a big one, and we got a little bit of a flap here, so we're going to use a small drop of glue, and we're going to glue that flap down, and then we're going to touch it up.
Okay, same dinged up corner 20 seconds later.
Yep, that's more better. I mean, obviously if you're like looking for it, and it's still wet, so it's glossy, but it'll die down, and these are kind of my dumb little trade secrets, okay? I want these amps to look as nice as they possibly can. This is why you get 5-star reviews when you sell stuff on places like Reverb. It's because you take your time to clean it up and you make it as nice as you possibly can, so the person who gets it says, wow, this is incredible. See, like, one other thing I'm probably going to have to do is I'm going to have to unscrew the handle to scrub the dirt and dust bunnies out from underneath it, because the surface scrubbing didn't get it. It takes me all of 10 seconds to remove that handle and clean that up. But again, it makes it look more loved. One of these corners here actually is cracked, so we're going to replace that. But I mean, this is just simple cosmetic touch-up, and you can make a well-used amp look like a more gently used amp. And if it works 100%, everything's tight and it's totally ready to go, everyone's thrilled. This is not deception, this is just salesmanship. Do you honestly think the used car dealers do not detail their cars before they go out the door? So why would you want your amp guy to give you somebody else's cooties on some old disgusting amp? Vintage Mojo? Yeah, whatever. Okay, so a few days of excitement have passed us by. We've got our amp head all cleaned up and looking pretty. I've got it sitting atop a 412 Vox cab, which seems appropriate for it. Cosmetically, the amp looks really good. We replaced the one corner that was broken, and we have gotten a foot switch for it. So we'll take a look at the operation of the foot switch now. Typical for Vox foot switches on channel switching, if you have it into this channel 1 position over here, the foot switch button does nothing. So you've got to put it on channel 2, and then foot switch 1 button here. This will make it change channels. So there's channel 1, the clean channel, dirty channel. So you always put them on the second function and then they'll switch for you. And then the other one should be the reverb on off. So I think we're going to be fine. Let's just give it a sound check and call it a win. Okay, so we'll give this thing a sound check. I think I've got the volume level adjusted where the microphone can handle it on the camera. We're on the channel 1, which is essentially like an AC30 channel. You have your gain, you have a volume for that channel, treble, middle, bass, and tone cut, which is, we associate that with the AC50, AC30, kind of like a treble bleed, and then a reverb for that circuit. This circuit can be overdriven. You can overdrive this for a traditional Vox. I turned down the volume obviously for the sake of the camera. And we can back that back off, bring that back up. And then we have channel 2, which is the drive channel. There's a lot here. We have gain, we have a bright switch, which down is on. We'll start with, this is called a fat switch. The fat switch is like a mid-range boost. So we'll just start with things where they are. Okay, turn on the bright switch. I don't find that the bright switch does a little bit. The fat switch definitely does. Big sort of a low-mid boost there. I kind of like it, I think that works. And we have a presence, which is your kind of ultra-high treble, middle, bass, and volume for this channel, and a master volume overall. So there's a lot of power you can bleed off of this thing so it doesn't blow your face off. Very high gain, not something you would necessarily
think of when you think of a Vox amp. I think it's pretty cool. I think it's working good now. So there you go. Thanks for watching.